You wake up tired, not just physically, but mentally. There's this quiet pressure sitting in your chest. Bills, responsibilities, time slipping through your fingers, and no matter how hard you work, it never feels like enough. You trade hours for money, energy for survival, days for stability. And deep down, there's a question you don't say out loud. What happens if I stop? Because you already know the answer. Everything stops. That's the trap. And most people never escape it. But here's the truth that changes everything. The moment your income depends on your presence, you are not earning freedom. You are renting your life. Now listen carefully. In this audiobook, Make Money While You Sleep, using this system, inspired by the philosophy behind Make Money During Sleep, you are about to discover a completely different way of thinking. Not about working harder, but about building smarter. Not about chasing money, but designing systems that generate it without you. We are going to break this down step by step. You will learn how to stop trading time for income, how to build assets that work while you don't, how to use leverage in the modern digital world, how to design income streams that compound over time, how to think like someone who earns even when they rest, and most importantly, how to rebuild your relationship with time itself. Because this isn't just about money, this is about control. Control over your schedule, your energy, your life, and let me be clear. This is not a get-rich-quick promise. This is strategy. This is structure. This is long-term thinking. Everything in this audiobook is educational, designed to shift your mindset and give you tools. But what you build with it depends on you. Here's a line I want you to remember. Poor people chase hours. Wealthy people design outcomes. Let that sink in. Because everything you're about to hear builds on that one truth. Now ask yourself, how many hours have you already traded away? How many mornings have you woken up knowing you're repeating the same cycle? And how long are you willing to keep doing it? Because the system you're currently in was never designed to free you. It was designed to use you. But there's another system, a quieter one, a smarter one that doesn't scream for attention, but rewards those who understand it. And in Chapter 1, we're going to confront the uncomfortable truth that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. The truth about time, the truth about effort, and why working harder is often the slowest path to freedom. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you understand it, you will never look at your job, your time, or your future the same way again. So take a breath. Get ready. Because this is where everything begins. Chapter 1. The Lie You Were Taught About Work. Dear viewer, share your success story, even if it is small. It can motivate other people to visit the comments section and read it, and it can inspire them. Also, don't be shy about asking questions. And perhaps someone with more experience or someone who has been through this will share the answer. Remember, it is only through communication that people become stronger and better. Thank you. Chapter 1. The Lie You Were Taught About Work. You were told something growing up, something that sounded responsible, something that sounded safe. Work hard, and everything will be okay. It sounds right. It feels right. But it's incomplete because nobody told you what kind of work. Nobody told you that there are two completely different paths. One where you work for money, and one where money works for you. And if you don't understand the difference, you can spend your entire life doing the first one, waking up early, showing up on time, giving your energy away, only to repeat it again tomorrow. Let's slow this down, because this is where the shift begins. Most people believe effort equals reward. If I work more hours, I'll make more money. If I push harder, I'll get ahead. But there's a hidden ceiling in that thinking, because your time is limited. You only have 24 hours in a day. And once those hours are gone, they're gone. You can't save them. You can't multiply them. You can't get them back. So if your income depends on your time, your income is permanently capped. That's the part nobody explains clearly. You can work 8 hours, maybe 10, maybe 12 if you push yourself, but you cannot work 100 hours in a day, which means you cannot earn unlimited income through effort alone. Pause for a second. Let that land, because this is the quiet realization that changes everything. The problem is not that you're not working hard enough. The problem is that you're working in a system that cannot scale. And here's where it gets deeper. You've been trained to value effort over design, to respect exhaustion more than efficiency, to feel proud when you're busy, even if you're not progressing. But the world doesn't reward how tired you are. It rewards what you build. There are people right now sleeping, and money is still flowing into their accounts, not because they are lucky, not because they are smarter, but because they built something that continues to produce value without them. That's the difference, and it's a dangerous one to ignore, because once you see it, you start questioning everything. Why am I trading my time like this? Why is my income tied to my presence? Why does everything stop when I stop? These are uncomfortable questions, but they are necessary, because comfort is what keeps people stuck. You see, the system most people follow is not broken. It's just limited. It works, but only to a certain point. It gives you stability, but not freedom. And if you never question it, you'll never outgrow it. Now listen carefully. This is not about quitting your job tomorrow. This is not about rejecting hard work. Hard work still matters, but it must be directed differently. Instead of working only for today's paycheck, you start working to build tomorrow's income. Instead of trading hours, you start creating assets. And what is an asset? It's something that continues to produce value, even when you're not actively working on it. A system, a product, a platform, a piece of content, a digital structure, something that keeps moving even when you stop. And in today's world, this has never been more possible, because we live in a time where one video can reach millions, one idea can scale globally, one system can run 24 hours a day. Technology has changed the rules, but most people are still playing the old game, working harder instead of building smarter, and that's why they stay stuck, because they never make the shift. Let me give you a simple contrast. An employee works once and gets paid once. A builder works once and gets paid repeatedly. That's it. That's the line. And everything in your future depends on which side you choose. Now imagine this. You spend your day building something, not just completing tasks, but creating something that has value beyond today. Maybe it's a digital product, maybe it's content, maybe it's a system that solves a problem. At first, it feels slow. There's no immediate reward, no instant paycheck. And that's where most people quit, because they are addicted to quick returns. But the people who win, they understand something different. They understand that building assets feels slow at the beginning, but becomes unstoppable later, while working for money feels stable at the beginning, but stays limited forever. Read that again in your mind, because that is the trade-off. Slow now, freedom later, or comfort now, limitation forever. And most people choose comfort, not because they want to stay stuck, but because they've never been shown another way. That's what this audiobook is for, to show you the system behind the system, to help you see what others overlook, to give you the awareness that changes your direction. Because once you understand this, you stop chasing hours. You start designing income. And when that shift happens, everything begins to change. Your decisions, your focus, your priorities. You stop asking, how can I make money today? And you start asking, what can I build today that will still pay me next year? That question alone can transform your entire life. But here's the challenge. This path requires patience. It requires discipline. It requires you to work without immediate validation. And that's where most people fall off, because they want results. Before they build the system, they want rewards. Before they create value. But it doesn't work that way. You build first, you earn later. That's the rule. And the sooner you accept it, the faster you move forward. Now, before we go deeper, let me ask you something. If your income stopped today, how long would you be okay? A week? A month? A few months? Or would everything collapse immediately? That answer tells you everything you need to know, because the goal is not just to earn money. The goal is to build something that keeps earning even when you don't. And in the next chapter, we're going to break down exactly how that works, not in theory, but in structure, because there is a system behind people who make money while they sleep, a pattern, a method, a way of thinking and building that creates momentum over time. And once you understand that system, you'll realize something powerful. You don't need more time, you need better leverage, and that changes the game completely. Chapter 2. The System That Works While You Don't. Dear viewers, write which city you're from. It's interesting to see which corners of the world are watching our videos. Chapter 2. The System That Works While You Don't. There is a moment, a very specific moment, when everything begins to shift. It's the moment you stop asking, how do I make money today? And you start asking, what system can I build that keeps making money tomorrow? And the day after that, and the day after that. That question alone separates workers from builders, because workers focus on effort, builders focus on systems. Now let's break this down clearly, because system sounds complex, but it's not. A system is simply this, a structured way of creating value that continues operating without your constant involvement. That's it. It's not magic. It's not luck. It's design. And once you understand how systems work, you stop thinking in hours and start thinking in loops. Let me explain. Most people live in a linear income model. You work, you get paid, you stop, income stops. That's a straight line. Effort equals money. No effort, no money. But systems operate differently. You build once, it produces repeatedly, it scales over time. That's a loop, and loops are where freedom begins. Because a loop doesn't require your constant presence. It just needs to be built correctly. Now here's where most people get it wrong. They think systems are only for big companies, tech founders, investors, people with money. But that's outdated thinking. Because in today's world, anyone can build a system. You just need 3 core components: value, delivery, Automation. Let's go deeper. First, value. Every system starts with value. Something useful, something people need, something that solves a problem. It doesn't have to be revolutionary. It just has to matter. Because money is not created by effort. It is created by value. If what you build helps people save time, make money, feel better, learn faster, it has value. And value is what people pay for. Second, delivery. How does your value reach people? This is where most people hesitate. Because they think they need a huge audience. You don't. You need a pathway. A way for your value to reach someone without you manually handing it to them every time. This could be a video that keeps getting views, a digital product that people can buy anytime, a platform that distributes your work. The point is, you create once and it delivers continuously. Third, automation. This is the part that transforms effort into freedom. Automation means your system continues to operate without your constant input. It doesn't mean you do nothing. It means you stop doing everything manually. And this is where technology becomes your leverage. Think about this. A video you upload today can still generate income months later. A product you create once can be sold thousands of times. A system you build can run 24 hours a day. That's automation. And when you combine these three, value, delivery, automation, you create something powerful, a system that works, even when you don't. Now here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Building this takes time. It takes focus. It takes patience. Because at the beginning, it feels like nothing is happening. You build and there's no result. You create and nobody notices. You invest time and nothing comes back immediately. And that's where most people quit, because they are used to instant feedback, work to paycheck, effort to reward. But systems don't reward you instantly. They reward you exponentially. At first, it's invisible, then it starts to grow, and eventually it compounds. Let me say that again. At first, nothing, then something, then momentum. And once momentum starts, everything changes. But you have to get through the first phase, the silent phase, the phase where nobody is clapping, the phase where you are building without proof. This is where discipline matters. This is where belief matters. Because if you stop here, you never reach the part where it pays off, and most people stop here. They build for a few days, maybe a few weeks, then they say it's not working. And they go back to trading time for money, back to the safe path, back to the cycle. But the people who succeed, they understand something deeper. They understand that systems are not built for today. They are built for the future. They are planting seeds that grow later. And here's a powerful thought. You are already using systems every day, just not your own. You scroll platforms that make money whether you're there or not. You buy from systems that run without the owner being present. You consume content that was created once and continues to earn. So the question is not, do systems work? The question is, why are you not building one? Why are you only participating instead of creating? Because once you shift from consumer to builder, your entire life changes. You stop being part of someone else's system and start creating your own. Now, I want you to pause and think about this deeply. What skill do you have? What knowledge do you have? What perspective do you have? What problem can you solve? Because your system starts there, not with perfection, not with a big plan, but with something real, something useful, something that can grow. And once you start, you refine, you improve, you expand, but you must begin because nothing works until something exists. Now here's where it gets interesting, because building a system is not just about action, it's about thinking differently. And in the next chapter, we're going to break that down. The mindset shift that allows you to see opportunities where others see obstacles. The way of thinking that turns ordinary ideas into income-generating machines. Because before you build anything, you must first learn how to see differently. And once you do, you'll start noticing something surprising. Opportunities have been around you this whole time. You just weren't looking the right way. Chapter 3. The mindset that creates passive income. Chapter 3. The mindset that creates passive income. Before a system exists in your life, it exists in your thinking. That's where everything begins. Not in your bank account, not in your skills, not in your resources, but in the way you see the world. Because two people can look at the exact same opportunity, and one ignores it, while the other builds a life from it. What's the difference? Perspective. You see, most people are trained to think like consumers. They look at things and ask, how can I use this? How can this entertain me? How can this make my life easier right now? But builders think differently. They look at the same thing and ask, how can this create value? How can this solve a problem? How can this generate income over time? That shift changes everything, because once you stop consuming passively and start observing actively, you begin to notice patterns, opportunities, gaps, needs, and those needs are where income lives. Now listen carefully. Passive income is not about doing nothing. It's about doing something once. That continues working. And to do that, you must train your mind to recognize leverage. Leverage is the multiplier. It's what allows a small effort to create a large result. And there are 4 types of leverage in today's world: time, skills, technology, and attention. Let's walk through them. First, time. Your time is limited, but the way you use it determines everything. Most people spend time to survive. Builders invest time to multiply. Instead of asking, what can I do today to earn money? They ask, what can I do today that will keep earning later? That one question rewires your behavior, because now your time becomes strategic, intentional, focused. Second, skills. Your skills are not just tools for a job. They are assets. Every skill you develop can become a source of income: writing, design, teaching, problem solving, communication. But here's the key. You don't just use skills. You package them. You turn them into something scalable, something repeatable, something that doesn't require you every single time. That's when a skill becomes an asset. Third, technology. This is the most powerful leverage of our time, because technology allows you to reach people without being physically present. It allows your work to exist independently of you. A video can speak for you, a system can sell for you, a platform can distribute for you, and once you understand this, you stop seeing technology as entertainment and start seeing it as infrastructure, as a tool, as a bridge between your effort and your income. Fourth, attention. This is the most underestimated leverage, because attention is currency. Where attention goes, money follows. And in today's world, attention lives online, which means if you can capture attention and direct it toward value, you create opportunity. But most people don't build attention. They consume it, they scroll, they watch, They react instead of creating something that others want to engage with. And that's why they stay on the outside, watching others win. Now here's where everything connects. When you combine time used intentionally, skills turned into assets, technology used for scale, and attention directed toward value, you create leverage. And leverage is the foundation of passive income. Without it, you are stuck trading time. With it, you start building systems. Now let's make this real. Imagine someone who understands this. They spend time learning a skill. They use that skill to create something valuable. They use technology to distribute it. They capture attention, and they build a system around it. At first, it's small, almost invisible, but over time, it grows, and eventually, it becomes something that produces without constant effort. That's the process. Not overnight success, not luck, but structured growth. And here's the truth. Most people never get here because they never change how they think. They keep looking for shortcuts, quick wins, easy money. But those things don't last because they are not built on systems. They are built on moments, and moments fade. But systems compound. Now let me ask you something. When you look at the world, what do you see? Do you see distractions? Or do you see opportunities? Do you see content? Or do you see potential assets? Do you see time passing? Or do you see time building? Because your answer determines your direction. And if you want to make money while you sleep, you must train yourself to see differently, to think differently, to act differently. Because the system is not hidden. It's everywhere, but only visible to those who are looking for it. And in the next chapter, we're going to move from mindset into action. Because now that you understand how to think, it's time to understand what to build. The types of assets that can generate income repeatedly, the structures that actually work in today's world, because not all effort leads to freedom, but the right effort, pointed in the right direction, changes everything. Chapter 4. The types of assets that pay you while you sleep. Chapter 4. The types of assets that pay you while you sleep. Now that your thinking has shifted, now that you understand systems, leverage, and the difference between effort and design, it's time to answer the question that's been building in your mind. What do I actually build? Because ideas are powerful, but structure is what turns ideas into income. And here's the truth most people miss. Not all work creates assets. Some work pays once and disappears. Other work pays again and again and again. Your goal is to focus on the second kind, so let's break this down clearly. There are 4 main types of assets in today's world that can generate income while you sleep. 4 categories, 4 paths, and you don't need all of them. You just need to start with one. First, digital products. This is one of the most powerful forms of leverage available today. Because a digital product can be created once and sold infinitely. No inventory, no shipping, no physical limits, just value packaged. Think about it. A guide, a course, a template, a system, a solution to a specific problem, something that helps someone move forward. And once it exists, it can be delivered automatically at any time to anyone, anywhere in the world. That's the power. You create once, and it continues working. But here's the key. It must solve something real. Because people don't pay for products. They pay for solutions. Second, content-based assets. This is where attention meets income. Content is not just entertainment. It's a long-term asset. because one piece of content can continue generating value for months, even years. A video, an article, a piece of insight, something that educates, inspires, or solves a problem. And when done right, it builds trust, and trust leads to opportunity. But here's what most people don't understand. Content is not about going viral. It's about being valuable. Consistency beats intensity. Clarity beats noise. And over time, content compounds. Each piece builds on the last. Each view becomes part of a larger system. And eventually, it becomes something that works, even when you're not creating new content every day. Third, automated services. This is where skills meet systems. Instead of trading your skill for time, you build a structure around it, something that allows your skill to be delivered without your constant involvement. This could be a service that runs through a system, a process that others can follow, a model that operates with minimal input from you. The goal is simple. Remove yourself from every step, not completely at first, but gradually, until the system runs, with or without you. And finally, investments. This is the traditional form of passive income, but it still follows the same principle. You put in resources once, and it generates returns over time. Now here's the important part. Most people try to start here, but they don't have the capital, so they get stuck, waiting, delaying, thinking they need money to make money. But what they don't realize is the first three types of assets can create the capital needed for this one. You build first, then you invest, not the other way around. Now let's connect everything. Digital products give you scale. Content gives you attention. Automated services give you structure. Investments give you long-term growth. And when you combine them, you create something powerful, an ecosystem, a network of systems that support each other. Now here's where it becomes real. You don't need to build everything at once. In fact, you shouldn't, because complexity kills momentum. You start simple, one idea, one asset, one system, and you build it properly. You refine it, you improve it, you let it grow, and only then do you expand. This is where patience becomes your advantage, because most people rush. They try to do everything at once. They get overwhelmed, and they quit. But the ones who succeed, they move differently. They focus. They build. They stay consistent. And they understand something critical. Small systems turn into big systems over time. Now I want you to pause again and think. If you had to choose one path right now, which one would it be? What can you realistically start with? What aligns with your skills, your interests, your current situation? Because clarity is what removes hesitation, and hesitation is what keeps people stuck. Now let's address something important. You will feel resistance, doubt, uncertainty, because this path is unfamiliar, and your mind is wired to stay safe, to stay in what it knows. But growth never happens in what is familiar. It happens when you step into something new, something uncomfortable, something uncertain, and you move anyway. That's where transformation begins. And if this is resonating with you, if something in you is starting to shift, take a moment and make a quiet decision. Not a loud announcement, not something you post, just a decision in your own mind that you are done, only trading time, that you are ready to start building, because everything changes the moment you commit. Now in the next chapter, we go deeper, because choosing the type of asset is only the beginning. The real challenge is execution. How do you actually start? How do you build something from nothing? How do you move forward without getting lost, distracted, or overwhelmed? Because ideas are easy. Starting is where most people fail. Chapter 5. How to start building your first income system. Chapter 5. How to start building your first income system. This is where everything becomes real. Up until now, you've been listening, understanding, shifting your perspective, but now you have to move because nothing changes until you act. And here's the truth most people won't tell you. Starting is the hardest part. Not because it's complicated, but because it's uncomfortable. Because when you start, you leave the world of theory and enter the world of uncertainty. No guarantees, no instant rewards, no clear validation, just you and the decision to build anyway. So let's make this simple. Because complexity kills action. If you want to build your first income system, you only need to follow 5 steps, not 50, not 10, 5. And if you commit to these, you will move forward. Step 1, choose a problem, not an idea, not something that sounds exciting, a problem, because problems create demand, and demand creates income. Look around your life, your work, your daily routines, your frustrations, the things people constantly struggle with. What do people complain about? What do people want to fix? What do people want to learn faster? That's where you start. Because if you solve a real problem, you don't have to chase money. Money will follow the solution. Step 2, use what you already know. This is where most people get stuck. They think, I'm not ready. I don't know enough. I need more experience. But that's fear disguised as logic. You don't need to know everything. You just need to know more than someone else about something specific, because value is relative. What feels basic to you might be valuable to someone else. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you start. You refine as you go. You improve as you build. But you must begin. Step 3, create something simple, not perfect, not polished. Simple, because perfection is procrastination in disguise. You don't need a masterpiece. You need a starting point, something real, something usable, something that delivers value, even if it's small, because small systems grow. Perfect ideas stay in your head and never move. Step 4, put it into the world. This is where fear gets loud, because now you are visible. Now you can be judged, ignored, rejected. And that's exactly why most people stop here. They build something, then hide it. They wait, they overthink, they delay, but listen carefully. Nothing works if nobody sees it. Your system needs exposure, it needs movement, it needs interaction, because feedback is what improves it, and growth only happens when something exists in the real world, not in your mind. So you put it out, even if it's not perfect, especially because it's not perfect. Step 5, improve relentlessly. This is where the system becomes powerful, because your first version will not be your best, and that's okay. Because the goal is not perfection, the goal is progress. You adjust, you refine, you listen, you improve. And over time, your system becomes stronger, more effective, more valuable, and eventually, it starts producing results. Now let's address the real challenge, consistency. Because starting is one thing, continuing is another. There will be days when you feel like nothing is working, days when you question yourself, days when you want to quit. And this is where discipline takes over. Because motivation will not carry you. It fades. It disappears, but discipline keeps you moving, even when you don't feel like it. And this is where most people fail, not because they can't build something, but because they don't stay with it long enough. They expect fast results, quick wins, immediate success. But systems don't work like that. They build slowly, then grow rapidly, but only if you stay consistent. And here's a powerful reminder. Every system you see today that works effortlessly started with effort, started small, started imperfect, but it didn't stop. That's the difference. Now, I want you to imagine something. You commit to this process. You choose a problem. You build something simple. You put it into the world, and you improve it over time. At first, nothing happens. Then, a small result. Then, another. And slowly, momentum begins. And one day, you wake up, and something you built is still working, still producing, still moving without you. That moment changes everything, because now you see proof that this works. And once you see it, you can't go back. Now let me give you something to hold on to. If this message is hitting you, if you feel that shift happening inside you, make it real, not by telling people, but by deciding quietly that you will build something. And if you're serious about this, drop a comment for yourself. What will I build first? Not for others, for you. Because clarity creates action, and action creates results. Now, in the next chapter, we go deeper into something that will either accelerate your progress or destroy it completely. Focus. Because in a world full of distractions, the ability to stay locked in is what separates builders from everyone else. Chapter 6. The discipline of focus in a distracted world. Chapter 6. The discipline of focus in a distracted world. There is a silent enemy that destroys more potential than failure ever could. It doesn't look dangerous. It doesn't feel urgent. In fact, most people invite it into their lives every single day. Distraction, not the obvious kind, not just noise or chaos, but the subtle kind, the kind that steals your attention, one moment at a time. Because here's the truth. You don't lose your future all at once. You lose it in pieces. 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, scrolling, switching, checking, and before you realize it, your day is gone. Your energy is gone, and nothing meaningful was built. Now think about this. If building a system requires focus, what happens when your attention is constantly divided? Nothing grows, nothing compounds, nothing moves forward. And that's exactly why most people never build anything that lasts. Not because they lack ideas, not because they lack ability, but because they lack sustained focus. They start, then they get distracted. They build, then they stop. They try, then they drift. And over time, that pattern becomes their identity, starting, but never finishing. Now listen carefully. Focus is not just about concentration. It's about elimination. It's about deciding what matters and removing what doesn't. Because every time you say yes to distraction, you say no to progress. Every time you split your attention, you weaken your output. And in a world designed to capture your focus, protecting it becomes your greatest advantage. Now let's make this real. You sit down to build, you have an idea, you're ready to work, and then a notification, a message, a quick scroll, and suddenly you're gone, pulled away, disconnected from the thing that actually matters. And this happens again and again and again. until building becomes something you try instead of something you commit to. This is not an accident. This is design, because attention is currency, and there are entire systems built to take yours, to keep you consuming instead of creating. And if you don't become aware of this, you will stay trapped in it. Now here's the shift. If you want to build something that pays you while you sleep, you must protect your focus like it's your most valuable asset, because it is more valuable than time, more valuable than money, because focus determines how both are used. So how do you build it? How do you stay locked in a world designed to pull you away? You simplify, you remove, you commit. Let's break it down. First, create a distraction-free environment. Not perfect, but intentional. Turn off notifications. Remove unnecessary apps. Create space where your mind can work without interruption. Because focus is not just mental, it's environmental. Your surroundings shape your behavior. Second, work in blocks. Not all day, not endlessly, but with intention. Set a period of time where your only goal is to build. No switching, no checking, no interruptions, just focused effort, because depth creates results, not scattered attention. Third, train your mind, because at first it will resist. It will crave distraction. It will look for escape. That's normal. But every time you bring it back, you strengthen it like a muscle. And over time, focus becomes easier, stronger, more natural. Fourth, reduce input. This is critical, because most people consume too much, too many videos, too many opinions, too much noise. And when your mind is full, there is no space to create. So you limit it. You become selective. You protect your mental clarity, because clarity leads to action, and action leads to results. Now, here's something deeper. Focus is not just about productivity, it's about identity, because the way you use your attention defines who you become. If you are constantly distracted, you become reactive, passive, unfocused. But if you train your focus, you become intentional, disciplined, powerful. And that identity is what allows you to build systems, to stay consistent, to move forward even when it's hard. Now let me ask you something. How many things have you started but never finished? How many ideas are still sitting in your head? How many times have you said, "I'll do it tomorrow"? That's not a lack of ability, that's a lack of focus. And once you fix that, everything changes, because now you don't just start, you finish. You don't just try, you build. You don't just think, you execute. And that's where momentum begins. Now imagine this. You remove distractions. You commit to focused work. You build consistently, day after day, week after week, and slowly, your system takes shape. It grows, it strengthens, it starts to move, and one day, you realize something. You're no longer stuck in the cycle. You're building your way out of it. That's the power of focus. Now, before we move on, I want you to make a small decision. Not a big one, not something overwhelming, just one thing. What will you remove today that is stealing your attention? Because sometimes progress doesn't start with adding more. It starts with removing what doesn't belong. And once you do that, you create space. Space to think, space to build, space to grow. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that determines whether your system survives or collapses. Consistency. Because building once is not enough. Starting strong is not enough. You need something deeper, something that carries you even when motivation disappears. Because the truth is, Anyone can start, but very few people keep going. Chapter 7, Why Consistency Beats Talent Every Time. Hang on a sec. Hey there, dear viewers, write in the comments what you'd like us to talk about in the next video. We promise to read all the comments and pick the best and most relevant topics. Thanks. Chapter 7, Why Consistency Beats Talent Every Time. There is a myth that quietly holds people back, a belief that sounds logical, but destroys more progress than failure ever could. The belief that you need to be talented to succeed. That you need to be special, different, naturally gifted. But the truth is much simpler and much harder to accept. Talent might give you a head start, but consistency decides who finishes. Because in the world of building systems, of creating income that works while you sleep, talent is not the advantage. Consistency is. Let's break this down. You can have the best idea in the world, but if you don't act on it consistently, it dies. You can have incredible skills, but if you only use them occasionally, they don't compound. You can start strong, but if you stop halfway, you never see results. That's the pattern, and it's everywhere. People start with energy, excitement, motivation. They feel inspired. They take action. But then something happens. Progress slows. Results don't come fast enough. Doubt creeps in, and they stop. Not because they couldn't succeed, but because they didn't stay consistent long enough. Now listen carefully. Consistency is not about intensity. It's not about going all in for 1 week, then burning out. It's about showing up again and again and again, even when it's boring, even when it feels repetitive, even when nothing seems to be happening. Because that's where growth is happening, silently, under the surface. You don't see it yet, but it's building. Now think about this. If you build something once, you get one result. But if you build consistently, you create momentum. And momentum is what turns effort into results. Because each action builds on the last. Each step moves you forward. Each day compounds. And over time, that consistency becomes something powerful, something unstoppable. Now here's where it gets real. Most people underestimate consistency because it doesn't feel exciting. It doesn't look impressive. It doesn't give instant rewards. But that's exactly why it works. Because while others are chasing quick wins, you are building something that lasts, and that difference creates separation. Now let's connect this to your system. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be the best. You just need to keep going, to keep building, to keep improving, because systems don't reward perfection. They reward persistence. The person who builds once will always lose to the person who builds consistently every time. Now I want you to imagine something. Two people start at the same time. Same idea, same opportunity. One works hard for a week, then stops. The other works steadily every day, even when it's slow, even when it's difficult. After a month, the second person is ahead. After 3 months, the gap grows. After a year, there is no comparison. That's the power of consistency. It creates distance, and that distance turns into results. Now here's something deeper. Consistency builds identity, because every time you show up, you prove something to yourself, that you are reliable, that you are disciplined, that you are someone who finishes, and that identity changes how you move, how you think, how you act. You stop relying on motivation. You stop waiting for the perfect moment. You become someone who executes no matter what. And that's when everything shifts. Now let's address the challenge, because staying consistent is not easy. There will be days when you don't feel like it, days when you're tired, distracted, unmotivated, and this is where most people break, because they listen to their feelings instead of their commitment. But here's the truth. Your feelings are temporary, your decisions are permanent. If you only act when you feel like it, you will never build anything that lasts. But if you act regardless of how you feel, you become unstoppable, because now your progress is not dependent on your mood. It's driven by your discipline. Now let me give you something simple, a rule you can follow. Small but powerful. Show up, even when you don't want to. Not perfectly, not at full intensity, just show up. Because showing up keeps the system alive. It keeps the momentum going, and momentum is everything. Now think about this. What would happen if you worked on your system every single day for the next year? Not perfectly, not intensely, just consistently. Do you think your life would stay the same, or would something shift? Because most people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can do in a year. Consistency bridges that gap. Now, before we move forward, I want you to make a quiet commitment, not to me, not to anyone else, to yourself, that whatever you decide to build, you will stay with it. Through the slow days, through the doubt, through the silence, because that's where the real work happens. That's where systems are formed. That's where results begin. And if this resonates with you, if you feel that internal shift, take a moment and remind yourself, I don't need to be perfect. I just need to be consistent. Because that mindset will carry you further than anything else. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that can either multiply your results or destroy them completely. Time. Not how much you have, but how you use it. Because once you understand how to structure your time, you stop feeling busy and start becoming productive. Chapter 8. How to use time like someone who builds wealth. Chapter 8. How to use time like someone who builds wealth. Time is the only resource that you cannot earn back. You can lose money and recover it. You can lose opportunities and create new ones. But time, once it's gone forever. And yet, most people treat it like it has no value. They spend it casually. They waste it unconsciously. They give it away without thinking, not because they're careless, but because they've never been taught how to see it properly. Because here's the truth. Time is not just something you spend. Time is something you invest. And the way you use it determines the direction of your life. Now think about this. Two people have the same 24 hours, same day, same amount of time. But one builds something that grows, while the other stays in the same place. Why? Because it's not about how much time you have. It's about how you structure it. Now let's break this down. There are 3 ways people use time: consumption, maintenance, creation. And understanding these 3 changes everything. First, consumption. This is where most people spend the majority of their time. Watching, scrolling, listening, reacting, taking in information without producing anything. Now, consumption is not bad. It's necessary. You learn, you observe, you gather ideas. But when consumption becomes your default, you stop building. you become passive, and passive people do not create systems. They feed them. Second, maintenance. This is the time you spend keeping your life running, work, responsibilities, daily tasks, things you have to do, things that keep everything stable. And this is where most people get stuck, because maintenance takes energy, it takes time, and after it's done, there's very little left. So they rest, they recover, and the cycle repeats. Day after day, week after week, nothing changes, because all their time is spent maintaining, not building. And then there's the third category, creation. This is the most important one, because creation is what builds your future. This is where systems are formed, where assets are created, where leverage is built. And here's the problem. Most people never make time for this, not because they can't, but because they don't prioritize it. They wait for free time. They wait for the perfect moment. They wait until they feel ready. But that moment never comes, because life is always full. There's always something to do, something to handle, something to respond to. So creation gets pushed back, delayed, ignored, and that's why nothing changes. Now, here's the shift. If you want to build something that pays you while you sleep, creation cannot be optional. It must be intentional. It must be scheduled. It must be protected. Not when you have time, but because you make time. Now let's make this practical. You don't need 10 hours a day. You don't need to quit everything. You need one focused block, one period of time where your only goal is to create, to build, to move forward, even if it's just 1 hour. Because 1 hour, used correctly, compounds, day after day, week after week, month after month, and over time, that hour becomes something powerful, something that builds momentum, something that changes your trajectory, but only if you protect it. Now here's the challenge. Your mind will resist this. It will tell you, you're tired, you'll do it later, you need a break. And sometimes it will sound reasonable. But here's the truth. If you don't take control of your time, something else will. Distractions, responsibilities, other people's priorities. And before you know it, your day is gone again. Now think about this. How many hours have you spent consuming instead of creating? How many opportunities have you delayed because you were waiting? How much progress has been lost to distraction? These are uncomfortable questions, but they matter because awareness is what creates change. Now here's something powerful. You don't need more time. You need better decisions, because time is not the problem. Priority is. And once you shift your priorities, your time starts working differently. You stop reacting. You start deciding. You stop drifting. You start building. And that's where everything changes. Now imagine this. Every day, you dedicate time to creation. Not perfectly, not intensely, but consistently. You build something. You improve something. You move forward. At first, it feels small, almost insignificant. But over time, it grows. And one day, you look back and realize something. That small block of time changed everything, because it built something that didn't exist before, something that continues to work even when you're not. That's the power of using time correctly. Now, before we move on, I want you to make a simple adjustment, just one. Find one block of time in your day and claim it, not for work, not for distractions, for creation, and protect it, because that block is where your future is built. And if this is resonating with you, Take a moment and ask yourself, when will I build? Not someday, not eventually, but specifically, because clarity leads to action, and action leads to results. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that silently destroys progress, without most people even realizing it. Fear, not the obvious kind, but the subtle kind, the kind that keeps you stuck, even when you know what to do, because if you don't understand it, you will keep delaying your own growth. Chapter 9, The Hidden Fear That Keeps You Broke. Chapter 9, The Hidden Fear That Keeps You Broke. There is a fear that doesn't look like fear. It doesn't feel like panic. It doesn't stop you instantly. Instead, it whispers, it delays, it convinces you to wait. And because of that, most people never recognize it, but it's there. Every time you hesitate, every time you overthink, every time you say, I'll start later. This is not laziness, this is fear. But not the obvious kind, not fear of failure, something deeper, fear of exposure, fear of judgment, fear of being seen before you feel ready. Now think about this. You have an idea, something you could build, something that could grow, something that could change your life. But the moment you think about putting it out into the world, your mind starts creating resistance. What if it's not good enough? What if people don't care? What if I fail? And suddenly, you stop. Not because you can't build it, but because you're afraid of what happens after you do. This is the hidden trap, because it doesn't destroy your potential directly, it delays it indefinitely. You stay in preparation mode, learning, planning, thinking, but never executing. And on the surface, it looks productive, but underneath, nothing's moving. Now here's the truth. You don't need more preparation. You need more courage, because at some point, you already know enough to start. But starting means being visible, and being visible means being vulnerable. That's the real fear. Now let's break this down. Why does this fear exist? Because your brain is designed to protect you, to avoid risk, to avoid rejection, to keep you safe. And in the past, that made sense. Being rejected by your tribe could mean survival risk. But today, that same instinct is holding you back. Because now, the risk is not survival. It's discomfort, judgment, criticism, and your brain treats them the same. So it tells you, wait, stay safe. Don't put yourself out there yet. And if you listen to it, you stay stuck. Now here's the shift. Fear does not mean stop. Fear means you are moving in the right direction, because growth always feels uncomfortable, always uncertain, always unfamiliar. And if you wait until you feel ready, you will wait forever, because ready comes after action, not before. Now let's make this practical. You want to build something. You have an idea. Instead of asking, what if it fails? Ask, what if it works? Instead of thinking, what will people think? Think, what will happen if I never try? Because the real risk is not failure. The real risk is staying in the same place year after year, watching others move forward while you stay stuck in hesitation. Now, here's something powerful. Nobody is thinking about you as much as you think. People are busy, focused on their own lives, their own problems, their own challenges. And the fear of judgment is often an illusion, created by your own mind. Now, even if someone does judge you, so what? Does that stop your progress? Does that define your future, or is it just noise? Because if you let opinions control your actions, you will never build anything meaningful. Now, let's go deeper. There are three common fears that stop people from building systems. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of success. Yes, even success. Because success brings responsibility, visibility, change. And for some people, that feels overwhelming. So they stay where it's familiar, where it's predictable, where it's safe, even if it's limiting. But here's the truth. You cannot build a new life while holding on to old comfort. At some point, you have to step forward without certainty, without guarantees, just with a decision. Now let me ask you something. How long have you been waiting? Waiting for the right time, the right idea, the right moment. And what has that waiting given you? Because waiting feels safe, but it costs you progress every day. Now imagine this. You take action, not perfectly, not confidently, but anyway. You build something, you put it out. You face the fear, and nothing terrible happens. In fact, something interesting happens. You realize you can handle it, you can build, you can improve, you can move forward, and that realization changes everything. Because now, fear loses its power. Now it becomes something you move through, not something that stops you. And that's where growth begins. Now, before we move on, I want you to do something simple. Think about one thing you've been avoiding, one idea, one action, one step, and ask yourself, what am I actually afraid of? Not the surface answer, the real one. Because once you see it clearly, it loses its control, and you can move. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that accelerates everything we've discussed so far. Leverage. Not just understanding it, but applying it. Because once you learn how to use leverage properly, you stop working harder and start working smarter. And that's when systems begin to scale. Chapter 10. How to multiply your results without working more. Chapter 10. How to multiply your results without working more. There comes a point where working harder stops working. You wake up earlier, you push yourself more, you try to squeeze more effort out of your day, but the results barely change, and that's where most people get stuck. Because they believe effort is the answer. More hours, more energy, more grind. But here's the truth. Effort alone does not scale. Leverage does. Leverage is the difference between someone who works all day and someone whose work continues without them. It's the force that multiplies results without multiplying effort. And once you understand it, you stop asking, how can I do more? And start asking, how can I make this work without me? Now let's break this down clearly. Leverage is about amplification, taking one unit of effort and turning it into many units of result. And there are three powerful ways to apply leverage in your life right now: content, systems, people. Let's start with the first, content. This is one of the most accessible forms of leverage today because content allows you to speak once and reach many. Instead of repeating yourself, you create something that delivers your message over and over again. A single piece of content can be seen by thousands, even millions, without you being there. That's leverage. But remember, it's not about volume, it's about value, because content that doesn't help doesn't scale. Now think about this. Instead of explaining something 10 times, you create it once and let it work for you. That's how effort becomes efficient. Second, systems. We've talked about this before, but now we go deeper. A system is what removes you from repetition. It takes something you do manually and turns it into something that runs automatically. Instead of doing the same task again and again, you build a process, a structure, a flow that handles it for you. And this is where real freedom begins. Because once something becomes a system, it no longer depends on your time. It becomes independent. And independence is what allows you to scale. Now imagine this. You create something, you build a system around it, and it runs without your constant input. That's leverage in action. Third, people. This is the highest level of leverage because people allow you to multiply effort beyond your own capacity. Instead of doing everything yourself, you create a structure where others contribute. Now, this doesn't mean building a big team immediately. It means understanding that you don't have to do everything alone, because doing everything alone limits your growth. But when effort is shared, results expand. Now, here's the key. You don't start with all three. You start with one, and you build from there. Because leverage is not about complexity, it's about strategy. Now, let's connect this to your system. You build something simple, you create value, then you apply leverage, you turn your work into content, you turn your process into a system, and eventually, you expand. But here's where most people fail. They try to scale before they build. They try to automate before they understand. They try to grow before they have something that works. And that leads to frustration, because leverage amplifies what already exists. If your system is weak, leverage exposes it. If your system is strong, leverage multiplies it. So the order matters. Build first, then multiply. Now let me give you a powerful perspective. Imagine two people. One works harder every day, more hours, more effort, more stress. The other builds a system, then applies leverage. At first, the first person is ahead, more results, more visible progress. But over time, the second person catches up, then surpasses, because their effort compounds. While the first person is still trading time. That's the difference, linear versus exponential. Now here's something important. Leverage is not about avoiding work, it's about directing it properly. You still work, you still build, but your work has a longer lifespan, a wider reach, a greater impact, and that's what creates freedom. Now let me ask you something. Right now, how much of your effort disappears after you use it? How much of what you do stops the moment you stop? Because if most of your effort is temporary, you are not using leverage. You are repeating work instead of multiplying it. And once you see that, you can change it. Now imagine this. Every time you create something, it continues working. Every effort adds to something larger. Every action builds momentum. That's what leverage does. It turns your effort into something that grows. Now, before we move forward, I want you to shift one thing in your thinking. Stop asking, how can I do more work? Start asking, how can I make this work more? Because that question leads to better decisions, better systems, better results. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that quietly determines whether your system grows or stays small. Value, not just creating it, but increasing it over time. Because the more value you create, the more your system can generate. And once you understand how to expand value, you unlock a completely different level of growth. Chapter 11, How to Increase Your Value, so income follows you. Chapter 11, How to Increase Your Value, so income follows you. Money does not chase effort, it chases value. That is one of the most misunderstood truths about building wealth. because most people believe, if I work harder, I should earn more. But the world doesn't reward how hard you try. It rewards how useful you are. And usefulness comes from value. Now let's slow this down, because this is where your income begins to shift. Value is not about what you do. It's about what you provide, what you solve, what you improve, what you make easier, faster, better. And once you understand that, you stop focusing on effort and start focusing on impact. Now here's the key. If you want to make money while you sleep, you need to increase the value of what you build. Because a system that creates low value produces low results. But a system that creates high value can grow without limits. So how do you increase your value? There are 4 ways: clarity, skill, depth, and results. Let's break them down. First, clarity. Most people struggle not because they lack ability, but because they lack clarity. They don't know exactly what they offer, who they help, or how they solve a problem, so their work becomes vague, unfocused, forgettable. But value increases when clarity increases. When people instantly understand, this is for me, this solves my problem, this is useful, that's when attention turns into action. So your first goal is to get clear. What do you do? Who do you help? What problem do you solve? Because clarity attracts. Second, skill. Your value grows as your skill grows. The better you become, the more useful you become, and the more useful you become, the more opportunities you create. But here's the truth. Skill is built, not given, not instant, not easy. It requires time, focus, repetition. And this is where most people fall short. They want results. Without building the skill, they want income, without increasing their value. But it doesn't work that way, because your income will always reflect your value. So if you want more, you must become more, learn more, practice more, improve more, and over time, your value rises. Third, depth. Surface-level value is everywhere. Basic information, generic advice, things that sound good, but don't change anything. And because of that, it doesn't stand out. But depth creates separation. When you go deeper, when you understand things more clearly, when you provide insights others don't, you become different. And difference is what attracts attention. Now think about this. Anyone can repeat information, but not everyone can explain it clearly. Not everyone can apply it. Not everyone can simplify it. That's depth. And depth increases value. Fourth, results. This is the most powerful form of value, because results prove everything. You can talk about what you know. You can explain what you believe, but results show what works. And people trust results. They follow results. They pay for results. Now here's the important part. You don't need massive results to start. You need real ones, even small, even simple, because proof builds trust, and trust builds systems. Now let's connect everything. When you increase clarity, people understand you. When you increase skill, people respect you. When you increase depth, people value you. When you show results, people trust you. And when all 4 align, your value becomes undeniable. And when your value becomes undeniable, income follows. Now here's something deeper. Value is not static. It grows, or it declines, based on what you do every day. If you stay the same, your value stays the same. If you improve, your value increases. And that's why growth is not optional. It's necessary. Because the world moves, technology evolves, opportunities shift, And if you don't grow, you fall behind. Now let me ask you something. Right now, what is your current level of value? Not what you think, not what you hope, but what you actually provide. What problems can you solve? What results can you create? What impact can you make? Because that answer determines your starting point. And once you see it clearly, you can improve it. Now imagine this. You commit to increasing your value every day. You learn, you practice, you build, you refine, and over time, you become sharper, stronger, more capable. And as your value increases, so does your opportunity, so does your income, so does your freedom. Because value is what drives everything. Now, before we move forward, I want you to shift one belief. Stop asking, how can I make more money? Start asking, how can I become more valuable? Because when you focus on value, money becomes a byproduct, not a struggle. And that changes everything. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that determines how fast your system grows. Speed, not rushing, not forcing, but moving with intention. Because once you understand how to move faster without losing quality, you accelerate everything. Chapter 12, How to Move Faster Without Burning Out. Please like and subscribe if you want a better future for your children, your family, and yourself. It's very difficult to achieve success today, but I'm sure you'll succeed. All you have to do is learn and discover new things. Chapter 12, How to Move Faster Without Burning Out. Speed is misunderstood. Most people think moving faster means doing more hours, more pressure, more effort. But that kind of speed leads to exhaustion, not progress. Because real speed is not about intensity. It's about direction. It's about clarity. It's about removing everything that slows you down. Now think about this. You can run as fast as you want. But if you're running in the wrong direction, you're just getting lost faster. That's what most people are doing. Busy, active, moving, but not advancing. Because they confuse movement with progress. Now here's the shift. If you want to build systems that generate income while you sleep, you need a different kind of speed. A controlled speed, a focused speed, a sustainable speed. Because burning out stops everything, and consistency is what builds everything. So how do you move faster without destroying yourself in the process? You simplify, you prioritize, you eliminate. Let's break this down. First, clarity creates speed. When you know exactly what you're building, you move faster. No hesitation, no confusion, no wasted effort. But when you're unclear, everything slows down. You overthink, you second guess, you delay. So before you try to move faster, get clear. What is your system? What are you building? What is the next step? Not 10 steps ahead, just the next one. Because clarity removes friction, and friction is what slows you down. Second, focus eliminates waste. We talked about this before, but now you see it differently. Every distraction is a delay. Every unnecessary task is a slowdown. Every time you switch focus, you lose momentum, and momentum is speed. So instead of doing more, do less. But better, more intentional, more precise. Because focused effort moves faster than scattered effort, every time. Third, energy matters more than time. You can have time, but no energy, and nothing gets done. But when your energy is strong, even a short period of time becomes powerful. So you protect it. You don't drain it on things that don't matter. You don't waste it on distractions. You direct it toward building, toward creating, toward progress. Because energy is what fuels speed. Fourth, systems reduce effort. The more you build systems, the less you repeat work, and the less you repeat work, the faster you move. Because now, you're not starting from zero every time. You're building on what already exists. That's how speed compounds. Now here's something deeper. Speed is not about rushing. Rushing leads to mistakes, burnout, frustration. Speed is about flow, a steady rhythm, a consistent pace that you can maintain day after day, because sustainable speed wins every time. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever pushed yourself too hard, tried to do everything at once, and then stopped completely? That's burnout, and it destroys progress because it breaks consistency, and once consistency breaks, momentum disappears. So the goal is not to push harder. The goal is to move smarter, to find a pace you can sustain, to build without collapsing, to grow without stopping. Now imagine this. You move with clarity. You stay focused. You protect your energy. You build systems. And you maintain a steady pace, not rushed, not forced, but consistent. And over time, that pace creates something powerful. Momentum. And momentum is what makes everything easier. Because once you have momentum, you don't need to force yourself as much. You don't need to push as hard. Things start to flow, to build, to grow naturally. That's when you know you're moving at the right speed. Now, here's a powerful reminder. You don't need to be everywhere. You don't need to do everything. You don't need to move faster than everyone else. You just need to keep moving in the right direction, because direction beats speed without purpose every time. Now, before we move on, I want you to adjust one thing. Not everything, just one. What is slowing you down right now? Is it confusion, distraction, overthinking? Identify it and remove it, because sometimes the fastest way forward is not adding more. It's removing what's in the way. And once you do that, everything becomes clearer, easier, faster. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that determines whether your system becomes powerful or stays weak. Scale. Because building something is one thing, but growing it, multiplying it, turning it into something bigger, that's a different level. And once you understand how to scale correctly, you stop thinking small and start building something that expands. Chapter 13, How to Scale What You Build. Chapter 13, How to Scale What You Build. There's a moment, a very specific moment, when what you've built starts to work. Not perfectly, not massively, but enough to prove something, enough to show you this works. And that moment is where most people make a mistake. They celebrate, then they stop. Or worse, they stay small because they don't understand how to scale. Now listen carefully. Building something is one level. Scaling it is another. Because building creates income, but scaling creates freedom. Scaling is what turns something small into something powerful, something that grows without requiring equal effort. And once you understand how to scale, you stop thinking in limits and start thinking in expansion. Now let's break this down. Scaling is not about doing more work. It's about getting more results from the work you've already done. That's the shift. Not more effort, more output. So how do you do that? There are 4 ways to scale anything you build: reach, efficiency, replication, expansion. Let's go deeper. First, reach. This is the simplest form of scaling. More people seeing what you've created. Because if something works for 10 people, it can work for 100. If it works for 100, it can work for 1,000. But only if people see it. So you increase reach. You distribute more. You put your system in front of more eyes. Not randomly, strategically, where your audience already exists. Because scaling starts with visibility. No visibility, no growth. Second, efficiency. This is where you refine, improve, optimize. You take what's already working and make it better, faster, cleaner, more effective, because even small improvements create big differences over time. You remove friction, you simplify processes, you strengthen weak points, and as your system becomes more efficient, it produces more with less effort. That's scaling. Third, replication. This is where systems become powerful, because once something works, you repeat it, not manually, systematically. You create a structure that can be duplicated over and over again without starting from zero, because starting from zero is slow, but replication is fast. Now think about this. If you build one system, you get one result. But if you replicate that system, you multiply the result. That's how growth accelerates. Fourth, expansion. This is where you grow beyond the original idea. You build on top of what already exists. You add new layers, new systems, new opportunities. But here's the key. You only expand after something works, not before. Because premature expansion destroys progress. It creates complexity, confusion, overwhelm. So you build first, then expand. Now let's connect everything. You create something. You prove it works. Then you increase reach. You improve efficiency. You replicate the system, and you expand strategically. That's scaling. Now here's the truth most people don't understand. Scaling is not fast at the beginning. It feels slow because you're building the foundation. But once the foundation is strong, growth accelerates because now you're not building from scratch. You're building on top of something that already works. And that's where exponential growth begins. Now let me ask you something right now. Are you building something or are you just working? Because working keeps you busy, but building gives you something to scale. And if you don't have something to scale, you stay in the same cycle. Effort, then reset. Effort, then reset. Over and over again. But once you build something scalable, that cycle breaks. Because now, your effort has a longer life. Now imagine this. You build a system. You refine it. You scale it. And it grows. Not because you're working more, but because it's reaching more people, operating more efficiently, replicating itself, expanding over time. That's when you start to feel it, the shift, the moment where your work begins to work for you. Now here's something important. Scaling requires patience, because growth doesn't happen instantly. It builds, layer by layer, step by step. And if you rush it, you break it. So you stay steady, you stay focused, you stay consistent, because scaling rewards discipline, not shortcuts. Now, before we move forward, I want you to think about this. What have you already built that you can improve? What can you make more efficient? What can you put in front of more people? Because scaling doesn't always start with something new. Sometimes it starts with making something better. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that quietly determines whether your growth continues or collapses. Environment. Not just where you are physically, but what surrounds your mind. Because the people, the inputs, the influences around you shape your direction more than you realize. And once you understand how to control your environment, you gain a powerful advantage. Chapter 14. The environment that builds or breaks you. Chapter 14. The environment that builds or breaks you. There is something shaping your life right now, quietly, constantly, without asking for permission. Your environment, not just where you live, not just the physical space around you, but everything you allow into your mind, what you watch, what you listen to, who you spend time with, what you tolerate every single day. Because here's the truth. You don't rise to your goals. You fall to your environment. And if your environment is not designed for growth, it will quietly pull you back, no matter how motivated you feel. Now think about this. You decide to build something. You feel focused, clear, ready. But then you spend hours around people who don't understand your vision. You consume content that distracts you. You stay in spaces that drain your energy. And slowly, that focus fades, not because you lost discipline, but because your environment did not support your direction. This is why environment matters so much, because it either reinforces your growth or resists it. Now let's break this down. There are 3 layers of environment that affect you every day: physical, social, mental. And if you want to build something that lasts, you must take control of all 3. First, physical environment. This is the space you operate in: your room, your workspace, your surroundings. Now ask yourself, does your environment support focus, or does it invite distraction? Because your space influences your behavior. A cluttered space creates a cluttered mind. A noisy environment breaks concentration. A chaotic setup destroys consistency. But a clear space creates clarity. A focused environment supports deep work. And that's what you need, not perfection, but intention. A space where building becomes easier, where distractions are reduced, where your mind can work. Second, social environment. This is one of the most powerful influences in your life. The people around you shape your standards, your expectations, your beliefs. If you are surrounded by people who settle, you start to settle. If you are surrounded by people who complain, you start to complain. If you are surrounded by people who avoid growth, you start to avoid it too. Not because you want to, but because environment normalizes behavior. Now, this doesn't mean you cut everyone off. It means you become aware. You choose influence carefully. You spend more time with people who build, who think differently, who challenge you to grow. Because the right environment elevates you without force. Third, mental environment. This is what you allow into your mind every day: content, information, inputs. Because your mind absorbs everything. And over time, those inputs shape your thinking. Now think about this. If you constantly consume distraction, your mind becomes scattered. If you constantly consume negativity, your mindset becomes limited. But if you feed your mind with clarity, with growth, with purpose, you begin to think differently, act differently, build differently, and that changes everything. Now here's the key. You don't need to control everything, but you must control what you can. Because even small changes create big shifts. You clean your space, you reduce distractions, you limit negative input, you seek better influences, and slowly, your environment begins to support your growth instead of resisting it. Now here's something deeper. Environment doesn't just affect what you do. It affects who you become, because behavior repeated in the right environment becomes identity. And identity drives everything. If your environment supports discipline, you become disciplined. If your environment supports focus, you become focused. If your environment supports building, you become a builder. Now imagine this. You wake up in a space designed for clarity. You spend time with people who think forward. You consume information that strengthens your mindset. And every day, your environment pushes you in the direction you want to go. That's powerful, because now you're not relying on motivation. You're supported by structure, and structure creates consistency. Now let me ask you something right now. Is your environment helping you or holding you back? Be honest, because that answer explains a lot. Now here's the shift. You don't wait for a perfect environment. You create it, step by step, choice by choice. Because the moment you take control of your environment, you take control of your direction. Now, before we move on, I want you to make one adjustment, just one. What can you change today to improve your environment, your space, your input, your influence? Because even a small change can create momentum, and momentum leads to transformation. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that determines whether your system becomes strong or collapses under pressure: resilience. Because building something that lasts requires more than strategy. It requires strength, the ability to keep going, even when things don't work, even when progress slows, even when doubt appears. And once you build that resilience, nothing can stop you. Chapter 15, How to Stay Strong When Results Are Slow. Chapter 15, How to Stay Strong When Results Are Slow. There is a phase that every builder goes through, a phase that feels quiet, uncertain, sometimes even frustrating. It's the phase where you're working, but nothing seems to be happening. You're building, you're improving, you're showing up. But the results are invisible, and this is where most people quit. Not at the beginning, not when they're motivated, but here, in the silence. Because silence tests you. It forces you to ask, is this worth it? Is this working? Am I wasting my time? And if you don't have resilience, you stop. Now listen carefully. Slow results do not mean no progress. They mean the foundation is still being built. But most people don't understand that, because they are used to immediate feedback, immediate rewards, immediate proof, work to paycheck, effort to result. But systems don't work like that. They grow quietly, under the surface, before they become visible. And if you quit during that phase, you never see what could have happened. Now think about this. A tree doesn't grow overnight. First, it builds roots, deep, invisible, strong, and for a long time, you see nothing. But underground, everything is developing, and then one day, it breaks through and starts to grow rapidly. That's how systems work. But most people walk away before the breakthrough because they don't trust the process. Now here's the truth. You don't need faster results. You need stronger patience, because patience is what allows consistency to continue. And consistency is what creates momentum. Now let's make this practical. How do you stay strong when nothing seems to be happening? You shift your focus from results to actions. Instead of asking, is this working? Ask, am I showing up? Because showing up is what creates results, even when you don't see them yet. Second, you track progress differently. Not just income, not just outcomes, but actions. Did you build today? Did you improve? Did you move forward? Because progress is not always visible, but it's always happening if you stay consistent. Third, you remind yourself why you started, because when results are slow, motivation fades. And when motivation fades, purpose must take over. Why are you building this? What are you trying to change? What kind of life are you creating? Because when your reason is strong, your consistency becomes stronger. Fourth, you accept the timeline. This is critical because unrealistic expectations destroy resilience. If you expect fast results, you will get discouraged. But if you understand that this takes time, you stay steady, calm, focused, and that's what allows growth to happen. Now here's something deeper. Resilience is not just about pushing through. It's about staying grounded, not panicking when things are slow, not overreacting when results are small, not quitting when progress feels invisible. Because emotional stability creates long-term success, and emotional instability destroys it. Now let me ask you something. How many times have you started something, felt excited, then stopped when results didn't come fast enough? That's not failure, that's impatience, and impatience kills more dreams than lack of ability ever will, because success is not about speed, it's about endurance, the ability to stay in the process long enough for it to work. Now imagine this. You keep going, even when it's slow, even when it's quiet, even when you don't see results, day after day, week after week, and then one day, something shifts, a result appears, then another, then momentum builds, and suddenly, what felt slow starts moving fast. That's the breakthrough, but it only comes if you stay. Now here's a powerful reminder. You are not behind. You are building, and building takes time. Now before we move forward, I want you to make a quiet decision that when things feel slow, you won't stop. You won't panic. You won't quit. You will continue, because that decision separates those who succeed from those who almost did. And if this is resonating with you, take a moment and remind yourself, slow progress is still progress, because that mindset will carry you through the hardest phase. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that changes everything once your system starts working. Income streams, because one system is powerful, but multiple systems create stability, security, freedom. And once you understand how to build multiple streams correctly, you stop relying on one source and start creating something unstoppable. Chapter 16, Why One Income Stream is Never Enough. Chapter 16, Why One Income Stream is Never Enough. There's a dangerous illusion that keeps people comfortable until it's too late. The illusion of stability. You have a job, a paycheck, a routine, and it feels secure, predictable, controlled. But here's the truth most people ignore. If your entire life depends on one source of income, you are not stable. You are exposed. Because the moment that one source disappears, everything changes. And that's not fear, that's reality. Now think about this. How many people have felt secure until something unexpected happened? A job lost, a market shift, a sudden change, and overnight, what felt stable collapsed. Not because they failed, but because they relied on one stream. Now listen carefully. One income stream is not freedom. It's dependency. And dependency is risk. Because control is not about how much you earn. It's about how many sources you have. Now here's the shift. If you want to make money while you sleep, If you want real freedom, you don't build one stream. You build multiple, but not randomly, not all at once, strategically, because multiple income streams create something powerful: stability, flexibility, and leverage. Now let's break this down. There are 3 levels of income: active income, semi-passive income, passive income. And understanding how they work together changes everything. First, active income. This is where most people start. You work, you get paid, you stop. Income stops. It's direct, immediate, but limited. Now this is not bad. It's necessary. It gives you stability. It supports your life, but it should not be your only source because it depends entirely on your time. Second, semi-passive income. This is where things begin to shift. You build something, it produces income, but still requires some involvement, some maintenance, some input, but not constantly, not every moment. And this is where your systems begin, where your effort starts to extend beyond your time. Third, passive income. This is the goal. Income that continues without your daily involvement. Systems that run, assets that produce, structures that operate independently. And when you combine all 3, you create balance. Now here's the mistake most people make. They try to jump straight to passive income without building the foundation, without creating value, without developing systems. And when it doesn't work, they give up. But the correct path is layered. You start with active income. You use it to build semi-passive systems. And those systems lead to passive income. That's the progression. Now let's connect this to your life. Imagine you have one income stream. Everything depends on it. Your time, your energy, your stability. Now imagine you have 2, then 3, then 4. Each one small at first, but growing, supporting each other. And suddenly, you are no longer dependent on one source. You have options, flexibility, control, and that's where freedom begins. Now here's something important. Multiple income streams do not mean more work. They mean smarter work. Because once systems are built, they operate, they grow, they compound. And your role becomes strategic, not constant. Now let me ask you something. If your main income stopped today, what would support you? Would anything continue, or would everything pause? Because that answer shows you exactly where you are. And once you see it clearly, you can change it. Now here's the mindset shift. Stop thinking, I need one big income. Start thinking, I need multiple systems, because one system can fail. But multiple systems create resilience, and resilience creates security. Now imagine this. You build one system. It starts small, then you build another, and over time, they begin to work together, generating income, supporting each other, growing, and one day, you realize something. You are no longer dependent. You are supported by what you've built. That's the goal. Not just income, but independence. Now, before we move forward, I want you to think about this. What could your second income stream be? Not 10, not 5, just 1. What can you start building alongside what you already do? Because the first step changes everything, and once you begin, momentum follows. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to talk about something that determines whether your income grows over time or stays the same: compounding. Because small systems can become powerful if they are allowed to grow correctly. And once you understand how compounding works, you stop chasing quick results and start building long-term wealth. Chapter 17. How Small Systems Turn into Big Money. Chapter 17, How Small Systems Turn into Big Money. Most people overlook this, not because it's hidden, but because it looks too simple, too slow, too small, and because of that, they ignore it. They chase bigger ideas, faster results, shortcuts, and in doing so, they miss the most powerful force in wealth building, compounding. Now listen carefully. Compounding is not just about money. It's about momentum. It's about growth that builds on itself, where small actions turn into large outcomes over time. And once you understand this, you stop underestimating small beginnings because you realize small systems are not small forever. Now think about this. If you build something that earns a small amount, it doesn't seem impressive. It feels insignificant, almost not worth the effort. But what most people don't see is what happens over time. Because if that system continues to produce day after day, week after week, month after month, it grows, not instantly, but steadily. And steady growth becomes powerful. Now let's break this down. Compounding works in 3 stages: the invisible stage, the growth stage, the acceleration stage. First, the invisible stage. This is where everything begins. You build something, you put it out, and nothing happens. No results, no feedback, no visible progress. And this is where most people quit. And in that moment, everything changes, because now you are no longer dependent. You are no longer trapped in the cycle. You have created something that works for you. Now imagine building more, another system, another stream, another layer, and over time, they begin to stack, support each other, grow together, and suddenly, your life looks different. Your time is different. Your options are different. Because you are no longer living on one stream. You are supported by systems. That's the shift. That's the life you build. Now let me ask you something. What happens next? Do you go back or do you move forward? Because this moment, right here, is where everything is decided, not by what you know, but by what you do. Now here's something important. You don't need to change everything at once. You don't need to build something massive. You need to start. One idea, one system, one step. Because one step leads to momentum, and momentum leads to transformation. Now, if this audiobook resonated with you, if something in you shifted, make it real. Not by saying it, by doing something. Start building, start creating, start moving, and if you want to lock this in, make a small commitment. Hit like, not for me, but as a contract with yourself. A signal that you're not just listening, you're acting. Drop a comment and write one sentence. What am I building? Because clarity creates action, and action creates results. And if you know someone who is stuck in the same cycle you were in, share this with them. Because sometimes one idea, one shift, one realization can change someone's direction. Now listen closely, because this is the final line I want to leave you with. Your future is not built by what you earn today, but by what continues earning tomorrow. Let that stay with you. Let it guide you. Let it remind you every time you choose between comfort and growth. Because the life you want is not waiting for you. It is waiting to be built. And now you know how. So go build it. And when you do, come back, tell your story, and tell me, what should we build next?